I'm Claudine Wong, joining you from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm joined now by Will Pemble, who is a man of many skills and traits, but helps us through the business world in terms of how to get by. And I think, Will, first, thanks for joining us, but I think a lot of us are on new ground, even in our same industries, of how to do this. Those of us who weren't telecommuting are all of a sudden saying, well, now we're exclusively from home, or we're, really depending on our digital platforms.
Yeah, well, it's good to see you, Claudine. As you know, I'm a huge fan, and you're a Bay Area treasure, to say the very least. So it's really great to see you. Yeah, so give me a second.
Yeah, life has changed. Life has changed.
Yeah, it's like I was like, wait a minute, what day is it? I don't even know.
Yeah, and
we've met, right?
That's where we are. I mean, in terms of like you, and you have always been a business advisor. I mean, you've started, the internet is a special home for you in terms of where you began.
So I'll give you the quickie story of kind of how I got to be in the business that I am today. Once upon a time, back in what my kids call the 1900s, I founded, I know, right? I founded a company called Web.com, and Web.com started in my basement and grew to be one of the 20 biggest web hosting companies in the world. And so I know stuff about internet from a long, long time ago. The way we got to be successful was not from huge amounts of investment and VC money and like a really forgiving environment where if you made a mistake, you could just put money on it. We didn't have that. And so what we had to do was get incredibly good as a team at really three things. We had to get really good at communication, delegation, and time management. Communication, delegation, and time management. Those are the three things that make a person successful. Those are the three things that make a team thrive. And those are also the three things that will kill you dead if you don't know how to manage those skills. Now, the good news about those three, communication, delegation, and time management, is that they're skills. They're not talents. They're not something you're born with and you either have it or you don't. Anybody can get good at these things. And so we practiced those things. The result for Web.com in business was we did not have to cover the same ground twice. We did not have to learn from the same mistakes over and over again. We could make a mistake, screw something up, unpack it, learn from it, and not do that again. So we got to go from mistake to mistake a lot faster than other companies in our business who had a lot of money. So I believe the fancy term might be fail forward or whatever it was.
Fail forward, I love it. That's a very tech world kind of term. And since then, because you've moved on from that project that had a lot of success, and you've moved on, and you've moved on in a lot of kind of interesting ways that will bring us to the project you're on now, which is a whole nother ball game. Before we get to that, I mean, you're trying to share and take those skills that you learned in those days into the world that we're in now. I know you wrote a book. There it is. Goal Boss, the art of science of getting stuff done. And yours is more of what you were just saying, with the web, it was about how to do it as opposed to, oh, I just invented this new thing, but how to manage within the spaces that we have more efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely. So Claudine, in your adventures, you talk to people all day, every day with amazingly fantastic ideas, right? And the truth of the matter is, if I put on my cynical hat, is like, everybody's got a great idea. Just everybody. Go to any coffee shop. Well, go back in time and go to any coffee shop, and you'll hear all these sorts of amazing, great ideas. The trick is, what do you do with it? How can you get your idea into motion, into action, into the world, into the hearts and minds and hands and businesses of other people? That's the key. And that always comes down to these big three things: communication, delegation, time management, accountability, getting stuff done, having your teammates know they can rely on you. So that was our big strength. And after I sold Web.com, which was like my internet victory, yay, and, let's buy a Porsche or do whatever.
Which you started in your basement, right? Like, in the beginnings, right?
Yeah, but then we got big. I mean, we were like, we really made some things happen. And after that was done, I found myself just kind of sitting around, and people started asking, hey, how'd you do that? I was like, well, actually, the technology from web hosting company to web hosting company, it's kind of all the same. And honestly, it's the same today as it was, a decade ago. What made us different, and people asked, and I didn't know it at the time, but people kept asking, what made you guys win so hard? And the answer was, we just did better teamwork than anybody else. We communicated as a group better than anybody else. We got stuff done better than anybody else. And that allowed us to run with the big dogs, right? We could keep up with GoDaddy, who had just unlimited amounts of money. And then, not on purpose, because my whole life is kind of one happy accident after another. But then people's like, wow, could you come and show us how to do that? And I was like, geez, I don't know. I guess I could. And that's—
how many people do that well? I mean, if we're really being honest in terms of, people have great ideas, and really in any space, especially with the startup world we're in, it's good ideas, but it's execution that kind of determines whether someone can go to the next step after that.
That's a great question. And the answer is a little bit unclear. Almost nobody might be one of the answers. If you look at like SBA statistics, 99, 95, whatever percent, almost all of new businesses fail. And they fail for a bunch of reasons. Every time, and now I'm like a management consultant and a coach, and I help companies with strategy and all those fancy grown-up-y old guy things. But whenever I see a business failing now, whenever I see somebody with a fantastic idea and brilliance and spark and all of those qualities that we admire so much, whenever I see somebody like that fouling up their business or not getting the traction they need, it's always because of communication, delegation, and time management. It's always one of those things, because they're not particularly sexy. It's not as sexy as the idea.
It's not as fun to work on.
No, it's not. It's really, really hard work. And so, and it's like we were talking about our kids before we pulled the trigger on this talk. My kids, a lot of times, I never tell my kids they're smart. And the reason is smart doesn't get you there. Smart doesn't make a difference, because once you get up into the kind of the big leagues of the business world or college or any place, everybody's smart. Smart is not a differentiator once you start to like run with the big dogs. What makes the difference is how hard you can work, how well you can communicate your ideas, how well you can make sure the thing you ask somebody to do is going to get done the way you imagined it. And those things are hugely important. And so when I see a business failing or struggling, those are the things. It's always communication, delegation, and time management. Always. It's one or two or all three of those things. I promise.
And so when you have, this is one of the things that you have on your website that says everyone needs a coach. Your company's called Goal Boss and Goal Boss AI. In terms of right now, you had this going pre-COVID, and you're talking about those skills over time always being important. I guess now when you have so many businesses, right, who had great ideas, but now they don't even have the platforms to use that idea. You don't have platforms for, the way they were doing. Maybe they were doing delegation and communication and, all pretty well in their other world. Now we're in a new world. How many people are you getting reached out to you saying, okay, I gotta reinvent the wheel here. I was doing okay before, but I don't know how to do that well in this new space.
Yeah. So there's a whole nother set of rules about how to communicate with somebody over video as opposed to how to communicate with somebody in the room, right? You lose a whole bunch of touch, feel, energy, all of that stuff. Zoom is a whole lot better. Video is a whole lot better than just written communication. But still, it's a little bit different. I can kind of wander. I can mute my screen. I can distract myself. The way Goal Boss AI was built is, once upon a time I had a client and they were like, hey, we're going to add you to the Slack feed because you're our consultant now, you're our coach now. We want you to just kind of see what's going on and we can talk to you. And I was like, yeah, okay, Slack, whatever. Mm-hmm. I didn't use Slack at the time. But I, client, I installed it. I started to kind of just watch the Slack feed go by out of the corner of my eye. And this customer, this client, they had about 40 employees, not too many, but I was logged into their feed and I just sort of watched the conversations go by. It was kind of like I was standing by the river watching things float past the river. And in very short order, in a very short period of time, I realized that on a fairly regular basis, but still a little bit random, Dan would send out a message to everybody and say, hey guys, I'm going to be working from home today. And then there'd be other conversation that would be like, oh, well, we can't because Dan's not here today. And so I look at that, and if you need Dan in the building to do something and he's not showing up, well, then Dan has a time management problem. He couldn't get there. I'm going to be a little late. And so what I started to see as I just watched the Slack feed go by was I got to know everybody in the organization without ever having entered the building. I knew everything that everybody was good at, and I knew everything that everybody was bad at.
That's a little scary. I mean, for people who don't use Slack at their businesses, for the people who were like you when you first logged on, I mean, it is essentially a communication tool with lots of threads, and it's inter-office, mass texting, sharing, talking, channeling, and Slack, according to Slack, there's millions of people who are using this in their various industries. It's not industry specific.
No, it's not industry specific. It works for everybody. It's basically chat. Basically what Slack is chat. It's a communication, and you can set up different rooms or different channels is what Slack calls them. We're all familiar with how Slack works, whether we know it or not, because we all know how Facebook works. We all know how Insta works. We all know those things. And so Slack is essentially a social media platform, but it's built for business. And just like Facebook, you know about your friends on Facebook, you know about your friends on Instagram. And so for people who are familiar with Slack, the story I'm telling makes a whole lot of sense, right? Because there's just the feed, there's just conversations that go by, and you watch chats, and I can tag somebody and I can ask somebody and send a piece of information. So, but after just a couple of weeks of looking at the client's Slack feed, I got to know everybody in the organization. And that was sort of the genesis of the idea for GoalBoss AI, because again, what I do, people are impressed. They're happy to see me come by. We deliver measurable results for our businesses. And I know this because they keep asking me to come back. And the consultant, they're the first to go when things get dicey.
You've seen a bump in this world in terms of how busy you are, with people saying, I need this help.
Yeah.
In a time where, and you do it by scorecards. We always love scorecards, and
Yep.
and then we'll share your pretend scorecard, because you were hard on yourself in terms of, I don't know, is 3 stars a good score?
3 stars is like kind of the baseline, what we're looking for. And so, 1 to 5, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. What we're looking for is we're looking for 4+, right? So in this is kind of a pretend one that we put together. But basically what we look at is we look at the Slack feed. And so we look at the AI, not the humans, but the AI looks at the conversations going back and forth, and we look for topics, and the topics end up being communication, delegation, time management, teamwork, and grit, which is how hard you work at something. And grit is really important. If I could choose anything for anybody, I would choose a really, really high score, because people give up. You know that. So when we look at the scorecard, we kind of know this is where I'm at right now, right? So I'm kind of average communication, time management, grit, according to this scorecard.
Yeah, I'll bring it back to
GoalBoss AI will do, and here's a behavioral style graph that tells you sort of like the kind of how I solve problems and what are the best ways to communicate with me. You and I, by the way, have probably very similar disc graphs, right? You're a go-getter, aggressive, but not in a bad way. And then you're also really good at connecting with people, right? And so, and we've hung out enough to where I know that if we gave you that assessment, that's, we'd be like twins. So, so when communication happens, my job is in person. My real job, before all the crazy, my real job is essentially, it's conversational nuance, right? I watch the way people communicate. I watch the way they interact. And because I've seen so much of it and studied it so hard, I know what to expect. I know who's going to drop the ball and when. I know who's going to be unhappy in their job and when. Hey, we're thinking of hiring this guy for such and so. It's like, okay, cool. But 6 months from now, you're going to have to hire somebody else or move them up because they're not suited to the role you're trying to put them in. And that's
it age defined. I mean, are we better age?
No, it's no. So communication, if we just take communication, that's a skill, right? My ability to convey an idea to somebody else and make sure that they understand it the way I meant them to. A lot of times, here's an example, and I'm sure we've all seen this. I'm sure you've seen it. Somebody will come into the room and say, "Hey, I need this and this and this and this. Got it?" And then everybody will be like, "Yes, great." And then the person who barks the order leaves the room before you can confuse them with any facts or feedback. Then they go away. We're not really sure what they wanted, but they wanted something. So we do something and then we bring it to them. And a little while later, they're like, "This is not what I wanted. I told you I wanted coffee, not water." And I'm just looking at things on my desk now.
Well, that works.
Yeah. And you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." So dude who came in and thought he was asking for coffee somehow asked for water. That's bad communication, and it costs businesses and relationships and teams huge all day, every day. And I can tell.
Yeah. I'm curious though, in terms of, your example could have been in any workplace, but are you getting more calls for help from people who have been using Slack for a long time in their workplace, trying to be more efficient? Maybe more people are on it. Or are you getting calls from new industries, and what types of industries, who are saying we've got to employ something a little bit better, because before we could all go in the room and bark about coffee or water, and now we can't. And so now we've gone to things like Slack, and now we're terrible at trying to navigate this new universe.
Yeah. So I have a joke. So the answer is we're getting calls from teams who now have to work at home, who now that's good news and bad news. It's all kinds of news, right? But what the interesting, I heard a statistic. I don't know if it's true. I sort of don't believe anything I hear or read anymore. But it kind of resonates a little bit. About 30% of workers are able to work from home, and the other 70% are screwed, basically, right? But like, you can work from home mostly, right? You can make a go of it. I mean, I know it's not where you belong,
but it's where, we can make it work.
Yeah. And I can work from home. I can do my thing from home. I've used video conferencing a lot. And the funny part about it is I work normally with like really technical teams, just because I'm a technical guy. The funny part is I've never started a Zoom call or a WebEx call or anything like that. I've never started one of those calls without incredibly talented technical people, just banging on the thing, trying to make the video work for the first time. It's like, "Oh, this doesn't work."
Why can't I hear you? Why is it muted?
Yeah.
Yes.
What? Yeah. So like all of this, and it's like, so at the beginning of every video conference that I've ever been part of, we're all reduced to monkeys for the first couple of minutes, right? And then we have to kind of come back. So part of the good news for companies like Zoom is we're all getting like really, really good at using this tech. But one of the other reasons that I got into the business that I got into is that I just absolutely hate meetings, right? I don't want to go to meetings. I don't like to sit still. If I have to sit in a room for any period of time, I start to look around and wonder things like, I wonder what this building weighs, or, I just my mind wanders instantly. And so one of the things I've worked really hard at is to make sure that meetings are absolutely as short as possible. They are as potent as possible. We get the things done. Nobody who shouldn't be there is there, and they end when they're supposed to end, right? So that's...
Yeah. So I guess the question is, do we all need Slack, or only certain people need it?
I think only certain people need Slack, and then
in your scorecards, then, and which industries? I mean, because you've got a lot of industries that are trying to figure out how to best do it. I mean, do you think
industry doesn't matter, because what any company is trying to do, what any team is trying to do, is is they're trying to get things done. They're trying to communicate with one another, trying to deliver a product. They're trying to deliver a service. They're trying to finish the project. Pardon?
Is it by the size of the company then? If not the industry, then how do we determine, I mean,
the bigger the company, smaller companies in my view, and you'd be better asking Slack about this because I don't work there. But my view of the thing is companies with about 50 employees or more, that's where things can get really dicey from a communication standpoint. So like everybody loves to copy the boss on an email, right? Everybody loves to tag the boss on a Slack message, but give it a think, right? There's one CEO and 49 employees. And if I just send one message a day and tag the boss, all of a sudden my boss has 49 at best. The CEO has 49 minutes of reviewing Slack messages. So one of the things the AI does in the GoalBoss AI, one of the things it does is it looks at how much tagging is going on. And if we see everybody tagging the boss, we know a couple of things. We know the boss isn't really setting very good communication ground rules for the team. And we know that the team thinks running to dad every single time or mom is the way to go. We do this a lot, you and me.
Like we do.
I'm a really old white guy. I can't help these things.
That's why I'm here. I'll keep you. I keep you on point. How long does it take, do you think, for people to get efficient at this? Once it's pointed out to them. I mean, we do a lot. We always have a lot of bad habits. We don't necessarily.
It's there's this mathematical philosophical construct called an asymptote, which means if you half the distance from one thing to a next, like a graph here. Hang on. All right. Hang on. Hang on. This will be really easy. Right? Okay. All right. So let's say you start out here, right? And you're here, right? And so this is distance, this is time. And now, so we're there, and then we go to the next period of time. We'll call it days or weeks or whatever. And I cut the distance in half, right? And so there's my curve. And then the next time I cut the distance in half, and there's my curve. I get big progress early on. But then as I keep going, I cut the distance in half. I cut the distance in half. When do these two lines meet? When does this top line meet that curve?
Never.
Because we're cutting the distance in half over and over again. That's called an asymptote.
I feel like I just did distance learning. Thank you.
The way see, you got this. So the way GoalBoss AI works was with communication. My job is to get you essentially twice as good at communicating right away. And that like tagging thing, you can drop that in a day and all of a sudden, oh my God, I've got so much more time because boom. And then what happens is we get and then we'll find another thing and we'll do that. And then as we go, we get better and better and better. And after we work with clients for a little while, then we move into what I call conversational nuance, the subtleties, the amazing, because it's Apple and Tesla, it's companies like that, SpaceX, NASA, those are the companies that live at the very top of that curve. And they're looking at these teeny little incremental improvements in the way they do stuff. And that's why whenever you meet somebody who approaches their own performance this way and the performance of their organization this way, when you find them, you know it. And this is why, because they care about that teeny little minuscule incremental improvement in something. So that's the beauty of my job is like we deliver incredible result instantly because we can just tell people, hey, look, tagging, right? I'll just give you that one. Tagging, stop tagging, figure out better ways to communicate, trust your people to do their jobs, stuff like that.
You are looking at a different curve than the rest of us. And your curve is definitely an interesting one. And I think, certainly for the discussion, I mean, fantastic for people to figure out a better way to make this. I want to mention one thing before we go, and it's this, because when people recognize you, we cannot not show them this because it's just part of how people You. And yes, this is the guy, if people are watching going, is that the guy?
Yeah.
He builds roller coasters in his backyard. And that's me getting to ride the roller coaster in one of our first meetings that we got to go through it. So
yeah,
you are
is awesome.
Thinking out of the box in terms of
absolutely. And it's a really important, I love that you put that video up there, because I show that to clients, right? I'll start off a conversation and it'll always be, I do show and tell because I have so many silly things going on at my house. And I will always get a question from one of the people who are like, wow, somebody has a whole lot of free time, doesn't he? And I'm like, yeah, I do have a whole lot of free time. You know why? Because I know how to manage time. I don't fart around trying to do the same things over and over again. I get shit done. And that's why I can go goof around in my backyard and build a roller coaster or figure out how to breathe fire. That one's fun too. There's all sorts of things that you can do if you stop paying for the same real estate over and over and over again. So yeah, I can do that sort of stuff because I focus so hard on the things that matter at work. I don't ever do the same thing twice at work, and nobody has to. And GoalBoss AI makes that really, really easy. We watch how people interact through Slack, and then we send little suggestions. Hey, try this. Check out this video.
And that is helpful.
Very, very gentle. And it's non-invasive, if you will.
Non-invasive. All right. Yeah. Well, Will Thumble, always great to talk to you. You've always got a new project on hand and a new way to look at the world we're in. And usually it always involves laughing and having a good time. So we appreciate your time today.
Claudine Wong, I'm a big fan. I'm so grateful for the time.
Take care. Stay healthy. Bye.